The sweltering June morning of 2021 began with an unusual disturbance on Lighthouse Drive. 4 unmarked police cars quietly pulled up in front of a modest single-story house in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. Neighbors peeked through curtains as officers in tactical gear positioned themselves around the area, moving quickly but absolutely silently. Inside, Ryan Hale, 42, was preparing his morning coffee, a habit he had maintained for over a decade since the day his wife, Amanda Hale, mysteriously vanished. A rapid knock echoed at 7:46 a.m. Ryan Hale, Texas DPS. "We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the disappearance of Amanda Hale, 2010. The officers later described the moment Ryan set down his coffee cup. His hand trembled slightly, but his face maintained an eerily calm expression, as if he had been waiting for this moment for 11 long years. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. The early May morning of 2010 in Horseshoe Bay, Texas, carried the distinctive air of the hill country. Sunlight, just touching Lake LBJ, spread into a thin layer of glow, dry wind rustling through groves of oak and speckled granite, turning golden. In that tranquil scene, Amanda Hale, 38, prepared for her familiar bike ride, a routine she had maintained for years as a way to balance office work and family life. She had a light snack, quickly checked her bike brakes and water bottle, then left the house at the end of the sloping road leading into Horseshoe Bay West. For Amanda, the morning routes around the lake were where she found relaxation, and no one thought this trip would bring anything unusual. A neighbor near the house, Ellen McCrae, saw Amanda for the last time as she pedaled slowly past the turn, her hair tied high, her blue athletic shirt standing out in the early light. That image, simple and familiar, became the final moment anyone in the community saw Amanda. By noon, when Amanda should have returned and had lunch with the family as usual, the house remained silent. Her husband's calls only rang and went to voicemail, something Amanda rarely let happen. The 2 children searched for their mother around the nearby area, but no one saw her return. The family tried to reassure each other that she might have lingered somewhere because of the nice scenery or ran into a friend. But unease began to spread as they called a few acquaintances living near the bike routes. Amanda usually took, and no one had seen her. By afternoon, Amanda's silence became inexplicable. Her phone was unresponsive, friends around the lake area hadn't encountered her on the road, and there were no records of her bike journey after leaving home. The initial light assumptions, getting lost, stopping to rest somewhere, a minor issue, gradually lost credibility. The family shifted from worry to panic. When all contact attempts and self-searching fell into void, they made the decision no one wanted but could no longer delay. Report Amanda Hale missing to the police. As soon as the call was transferred to the nearest patrol unit of the Burnett County Sheriff, 2 officers on the afternoon shift immediately arrived at the Hale home. They entered, while the anxious atmosphere still enveloped the brightly lit kitchen, and began systematically recording initial information. The family recounted the entire morning sequence. Amanda left home as per her daily routine, alone, carrying her phone and a water bottle, with no other personal items. Small but consistent details. Amanda never went anywhere without notifying, was always home by noon. Calls were never ignored for that long, were viewed by police as important signals to assess risk level. From the family's statements, police quickly established a relatively clear timeline. Amanda disappeared just a few hours after leaving home, falling within the golden hours for effective search deployment. One of the more experienced officers asked in detail about Amanda's familiar bike routes. The family pointed out 3 main ones: the route around Lake LBJ with wide, easily observable roads, the route through the Horseshoe Bay West residential area, and the longer route through the low hills to the west, where fewer people passed. Right at the scene, they marked these routes into 3 priority areas in order from easiest to hardest access. The area map was spread out on the dining table. Every side road, small turn, slope, and potential accident spot circled with a marker. Another officer quickly checked weather information and the latest calls from Amanda's phone to evaluate possibilities of environmental issues or accidents. No data indicated rain, strong winds, or unusual changes in the area. Additionally, the fact that no one saw Amanda return or spotted signs of an accident along familiar routes led police to conclude this was no longer a typical getting lost case. When compiling all these factors, the short disappearance window, behavior unusual compared to habits, phone unresponsive, and no sightings in the area, police reached the necessary conclusion: the case met criteria for high-risk missing person. From that point, investigation and search procedures were escalated to priority. Nearby support units were notified. Area patrol teams were requested to scan the bike routes, and the county's internal communication system was activated to update any signs related to Amanda. As dusk began to fall, the marks on the map, detailed descriptions of Amanda's travel habits, and the clear worry on the family's faces merged into the first stream of information, leading to the next search step. At this point, though no specific evidence yet, police understood that time was working against them, and locating Amanda had to begin as night just touched the groves around Horseshoe Bay. Immediately after the disappearance was classified as high risk, Burnett County officers began the next step in the process, gathering witnesses and verifying all traceable information related to Amanda's morning journey. It was getting dark, but lights from patrol cars and homes along the Horseshoe Bay West neighborhood streets allowed them to conduct interviews without waiting until the next day. This area was inherently quiet, with residents mostly long-term families or vacationers, so most neighbors knew each other's faces and were fairly aware of Amanda's daily habits. The first people questioned were households along the stretch Amanda usually passed after leaving home. Ellen McCrae, the last witness to see Amanda from earlier, reconfirmed the time and direction. She emphasized that Amanda maintained normal speed, showed no signs of hurry or worry, and no one was following behind. A man watering plants. A few houses from the Hales remembered seeing a figure in a blue shirt on a red bike, but he couldn't be sure it was Amanda as he only glanced over. Such records appeared quite often, all vague. No one observed clearly enough to confirm anything definitively. Officers continued expanding the scope, moving toward the trails near Lake LBJ. A woman walking her dog that morning said she saw a cyclist heading toward the entrance to the low woods, matching one of Amanda's preferred routes. However, she didn't know who it was, as the distance was a bit far, and morning sunlight filtering through the tree canopy made identification difficult. Police noted the statement and continued scanning households around the FM 2147 area. An employee from a small roadside shop said he saw a few sports cyclists that morning, but when asked for details, he couldn't recall shirt colors or bike types. The amount of information gathered was substantial, but mostly fragmented and lacking specifics. Nevertheless, these seemingly unclear details helped police sketch a general picture of Amanda's likely direction. Most witnesses saw a cyclist from the Hale home direction heading west or southwest toward the area with many trails and sparse woods. Based on this, police began mapping probable routes Amanda took. They marked each point where a witness might have seen her, connecting these locations into a wide travel corridor. Though no one fully confirmed, the westward route seemed the most fitting with the timing and provided descriptions. As the map gradually completed, officers noted that this corridor passed through several accident-prone areas, sunken slopes, rocky patches, and sandy spots where wheels could easily slip. Therefore, they rechecked all statements to see if anyone heard cries for help, collision sounds, or unusual noises that morning. The general conclusion was no. No one heard any incident-related sounds. Some witnesses said that morning was quite quiet. Some were working in yards, walking or driving, but none noticed signs of conflict, argument, or suspicious activity. Notably, no one reported seeing strange vehicles lingering near turns during Amanda's passing time. This reassured police that there were no clear crime signs, yet worried them because, if no accident and no conflict, then where did Amanda go? Some officers questioned whether Amanda might have suddenly changed routes. The family affirmed that rarely happened, as Amanda was schedule-oriented and disciplined. However, police still had to consider every possibility. They scanned additional lesser-known side roads, small forest-piercing turns, and dirt paths typically used only by locals. Even so, the expanded witness list yielded no new data. Police noted that all community contacts followed the same pattern. People only saw a cyclist, with no standout details. No descriptions indicated Amanda met anyone on the road, nor did anyone mention seeing an unusual stopped vehicle. This led to an uncomfortable paradox. If Amanda had an accident, there should be traces. If she collided with someone, someone would hear or see. But all data was empty, leaving police without a clear anchor to direct the search. By late night, when compiling all statements, police concluded that despite interviewing many in the area, there was no specific record of the moment Amanda vanished from sight. The absence of both accident and conflict signs forced officers to rely more on the route map and faint observation points to prepare the next search step, which promised to be much harder the following day. Once the map of probable routes was completed and the witness list compiled, Burnett County Police moved to the next step, organizing a large-scale search force. This was the first phase where all local resources were mobilized. From early the next morning, when the sun had not yet risen high above the jagged rocks around Horseshoe Bay, search units gathered at a temporary command post set up right near the Hale home. The local Texar search team was called in for support, bringing extensive experience in handling missing persons cases in Texas Hill Country, where sparse forest terrain, mixed with rocky hills, always posed search difficulties. Police combined with Texar to reassign areas based on witness information and the route diagram prepared overnight. 3 main groups were deployed: Road Group, Trail Group, and Lakeside Area Search Group. Each was assigned a clear travel corridor with specific landmarks to avoid overlap and misses. The road group started from the routes Amanda often took around the Horseshoe Bay West residential area. This was the most accessible zone, with many homes, wide roads, and passing traffic. Along both sides, officers scanned every patch of land, every low bush, checking road edges and sections with potential fall risks. Since Amanda frequently biked these stretches, if a mechanical issue or light collision occurred, traces were highly likely, but nothing appeared. Bike tire marks left on dirt near residences blended completely into hundreds of other wheel tracks, with no abnormal signs directly linkable to Amanda. The second group delved deeper into the trail and low forest areas. Here, terrain grew more complex. Small intersecting trails, some sections with canopy cover, many rocky stretches that could unbalance a cyclist. Texar members used probing sticks to check dense grass areas and rock crevices. They closely observed signs like broken branches, wheel skid marks, footprints, or any object possibly belonging to Amanda. However, throughout the morning and nearing noon, all they found were dry twigs, rock fragments, and natural trail signs. No fabric scraps, no scrape marks, no indications of a fall or accident. This made search participants start feeling something abnormal, a person vanishing in a not-too-vast area, but leaving no physical signs, which was very rare in cycling missing cases. The third group handled the Lake LBJ lakeside area, where roads close to the water edge could hide risks. Here, the search team checked both dirt paths and the lake shore. They used binoculars to scan shallow water areas, scanning reeds and damp mud sections, because if Amanda had an accident near the shore, there might be wheel tracks or skid marks on the ground. However, like the first 2 groups, all results were negative. The lake was calm, shallow water clear, lakeside ground dry, with no disturbance signs. By midday, as sunlight grew harsher and early summer wind blew heat from the ground, search teams returned to the temporary command post to compile results. Reports from the 3 groups revealed a worrying reality. No physical traces related to Amanda, no accident evidence, no personal items, and no signs of conflict or struggle. Everything was as if Amanda had never passed these routes, though witnesses confirmed seeing her leave home. Officers had to ask the uncomfortable question, did Amanda turn onto an unknown road, Or did she have an issue in a spot so hidden it left no traces? While hypotheses were discussed, Amanda's family continued waiting in extreme tension. The prolonged silence, combined with no positive search reports, heightened their fear hour by hour. No one wanted to admit time was turning against them, but everyone felt it. The search team decided to expand the scope beyond familiar routes. Some TXR members suggested checking additional side turns and lesser-used road sections where broken terrain could naturally conceal traces. However, even expanding a few more miles, results remained unchanged. No new wheel tracks, no skids, no unusual objects on the ground or by trees. Some team members recalled past missing cases. No matter where the person fell, there was usually at least a small sign, scuffed dirt, pressed branches, or a dropped item. But here, everything was too clean, too normal. By the end of the first search day, as afternoon light fell on the rock slabs and insect sounds began from the sparse woods, concern had turned to genuine bewilderment. Police were not just facing a typical missing case, but one challenging every logical sign of a morning bike ride. Amanda vanished in an area dozens passed daily, but no one saw anything specific, and no place retained traces. This forced the search force to acknowledge that this initial phase, despite mobilizing many resources, had not brought them closer to determining where Amanda was in the hours after leaving home. And as the day ended with absolute void results, they understood the tension would only rise in the coming hours and days. As time continued pulling farther from the last moment, Amanda appeared in Horseshoe Bay. After a day of searching with completely empty results, Burnett County Police returned to the only starting point they had, Amanda Hale's home. In their experience handling missing persons cases in Texas Hill Country, when there are no traces in the field, thoroughly searching the victim's residence often helps determine whether the missing person left home in a normal state or if there was any prior disturbance. Therefore, on the morning of the second day since Amanda disappeared, 2 investigators were assigned to return to the Hale home to conduct a more detailed search, this time with the goal of seizing all of Amanda's electronic devices and personal documents. The house still retained the heavy atmosphere from the previous day. The family had tidied up the living room somewhat after police set up the temporary command post, but details remained showing the sudden interruption, a half-finished cup of coffee, running shoes placed askew beside the door, a thin jacket hanging on the hook that Amanda sometimes took if it was chilly. The investigators noted these observations, as any small detail could help determine whether Amanda left home in a normal mood or if something was urgent. All signs indicated she left for her bike ride as per routine. No clothes pulled out hastily, no open suitcase, no rummaged purse, and no signs of preparing for a long trip. The investigator in charge of collecting evidence began with Amanda's desk. The laptop was open, but powered off after the battery died, a sign she hadn't used it right before leaving. All personal folders, work schedules, emails, and documents were backed up to police devices for later analysis. Amanda's cell phone was not at home. The family confirmed she always carried it when going out, but its inactivity since the previous day indicated either the battery was dead or the device was turned off unusually. All phone account-related data was recorded to coordinate with AT&T. The investigators then moved to Amanda and Ryan's bedroom. This was where they hoped to find clues about Amanda's mental state in recent days, notes, workout logs, digital diary, or any changes in daily habits. But the room was completely tidy, with no signs of struggle, argument, or unusual movement of furniture. This helped rule out the possibility of a scuffle inside the home before Amanda left. When opening Amanda's nightstand drawer for inspection, one investigator noticed a small black object, long, looking like an ordinary pen but with an unusual structure. After close examination, he identified it as a spy pen, a type of pen with integrated audio recording or even video capabilities that most casual users are unfamiliar with. This device was not mixed in with other office supplies or papers, but placed separately in the drawer corner, as if it held specific significance for Amanda. The investigators immediately seized the device and made a separate report, as such devices are often linked to secret recordings that could reflect personal life issues the victim hadn't shared with family. However, at that time, they couldn't determine when or for what the device had been used. The discovery of the spy pen heightened police attention to other electronic devices in the house. They checked the underbed storage box and found some of Amanda's personal items stored neatly: jewelry box, watches, spare bank cards, passport, and a small bag with a few keepsakes. No items were missing or disturbed, an important sign that Amanda was not preparing for a long-term departure or intending to leave home. If she planned to go far, she would at least take her wallet, bank cards, or a few essential personal items. But everything was still there intact. The second investigator continued checking the closet. Amanda's clothes were hung by color, shoes arranged by type, with no unusual shortages. By comparing the family's description of what Amanda wore the morning she disappeared with the remaining items in the closet, police confirmed she only took her usual athletic outfit and cycling shoes. No other outfits were taken, further reinforcing that Amanda only intended to be out briefly. In the bathroom, they checked the vanity and personal care items. Toothbrush, cosmetics, prescription medications, and daily care products were all in their usual places. A daily vitamin box remained untouched, and according to the usage history Amanda marked with pencil, there were no signs she was preparing for a lifestyle change or long absence. A pill was still in the slot for the day she disappeared, proving she hadn't taken it or intended to be away that morning. Police updated the notes. Amanda did not pack personal items, did not take identification documents, did not carry anything beyond minimal gear for a bike ride. Combined with the home showing absolutely no signs of disturbance, all evidence indicated she left in a normal, orderly, and unforced state. Throughout the search, the two investigators kept returning to the central question: did Amanda have any unusual thoughts in the preceding days? A short letter? A message? A private note? But they found nothing of that sort. The weekly work schedule was completely normal, with no mysterious appointments or sudden changes. The lead investigator finally compiled all seized evidence: laptop, notebooks, personal documents, email folders, and especially the spy pen. Everything was sealed and handed over to the digital forensics lab for deeper analysis. As they left the Hale home in the afternoon, the Texas sunlight had shifted to a golden-orange hue stretching across the lake. From an objective viewpoint, the house showed all signs of someone leaving for a short intended time, as every day, and never returning. The absence of any physical clues inside only heightened the unease, because if Amanda wasn't preparing to leave, no conflict, no unusual departure, then the most important question remained unanswered. What happened to her after stepping out that familiar door? When the search of Amanda's home yielded no specific leads, and the first day's search teams found no noteworthy physical traces, Burnett County Police were forced to expand the search to more rugged areas. These were regions they hadn't had time or manpower to access the previous day, including narrow trails leading deep into sparse woods, rocky slopes, and lesser-traveled roads west of Horseshoe Bay. The terrain here was significantly more complex, many sections of red dirt mixed with rocks, tree roots protruding like natural traps, and deep rock crevices forming small ravines extending down the hillsides. That morning, Texar, along with police, mobilized additional personnel and divided into smaller teams to cover a larger area. They relied on the map created from witness statements, while also expanding to areas Amanda rarely visited but could have turned into if trying a new route. The weather was lightly sunny, dry wind blowing down from the hills, creating relatively favorable conditions for the search. Around mid-morning, a search group following a little-used trail between two strips of sparse woods noted small changes on the ground. Some compressed dirt patches, a few small rocks displaced, but not enough to confirm relation to Amanda. However, one veteran Texar member suggested checking deeper down into the rock crevice below, where the terrain suddenly dropped steeply and often collected items fallen from above. Approaching the edge of a narrow but nearly 3-meter-deep crevice, one team member suddenly spotted a brightly colored object standing out against the dark rock background. They called another person for assistance, shone a light closely, and immediately recognized it as a red bicycle frame, the exact model and color Amanda used when leaving home. This discovery focused the entire team's attention on the crevice. They descended via a safe roundabout path, carefully checking for any other traces around the area. The bike lay tilted to one side, leaning against the rock wall, front wheel slightly turned to one side, but what drew the investigators' attention most was the bike's overall condition. It showed no signs of a hard fall or serious accident, frame not bent, no large scratches, pedals not broken, and brake cables intact. Even the handlebars were not clearly misaligned, while on steep rocky terrain, a real fall would leave dents or deformations in these details. The lead investigator, noting the scene, after close observation, remarked that the bike showed no signs of rolling down the slope. If the bike had slipped from higher up, the tires should bear scrape marks or rock scratches, but most of the bike's surface was unreasonably clean for the terrain. Even the dust layer on the frame was fairly even, indicating it hadn't rolled across multiple surfaces. Search team members began examining the surrounding area, looking for footprints, skid marks, or signs Amanda might have slipped into the crevice. But the ground at the rock edge had no deep skid marks, no broken branches, and no indications a body had fallen. A fall into such a crevice was almost impossible without leaving significant physical traces on the upper ground. The forensic technical team was called to photograph the scene immediately before anyone touched the bike. Police cordoned off the entire area, set up protective netting, and mapped the position to ensure all information was accurately recorded. When viewed from multiple angles, the anomaly became clearer. The bike appeared placed in that position rather than naturally fallen. The rear wheel sat on a flat rock slab, while the front wheel lightly touched a larger rock piece, a stable arrangement that gravity from above could hardly create. A young investigator suggested the possibility Amanda might have carried the bike down herself, if avoiding something, or lost balance, but remained conscious enough to move it by hand. However, veteran investigators quickly dismissed this, because if Amanda went down the crevice herself, there would at least be footprints, drag marks, or fabric scraps caught on rocks. But none of that appeared. The area was too clean to reflect any natural victim movement. While the technical team marked the bike's position, Texar conducted another sweep of the area around the crevice, expanding the check radius by several dozen meters. They examined low bushes, rock hollows, and mossy ground, but still found nothing related to Amanda: no water bottle, no helmet, no gloves, no dropped items. As the scene report was compiled, the anomaly became even clearer. The bicycle was the first evidence discovered since Amanda's disappearance, but instead of narrowing the investigation, it raised another question: why was the bike in a position as if placed down? And more importantly, why were there no accident signs? One investigator temporarily concluded that this scene did not reflect a natural incident. In cycling accidents in hilly regions, finding the bike intact with no surrounding traces was very rare. This led police to begin considering the possibility the scene had been staged, though the purpose was not yet determinable. This discovery both opened an important clue and increased the mystery surrounding Amanda's disappearance. And as the search team left the crevice to prepare a full report, everyone understood that finding the bicycle was only the first step in uncovering what really happened the morning Amanda left home for the last time. The discovery of the bicycle in an overly clean condition and positioned inconsistently with a serious accident heightened the investigation team's caution in the next phase of the search. As the scene report was compiled and the technical team conducted final documentation around the crevice, Texar and police continued expanding the search radius around this area. A familiar principle in missing persons cases is if the first piece of evidence is found, the next is highly likely to be somewhere in the vicinity. However, the sparse woods west of Horseshoe Bay were not predictable terrain, with an intersecting network of trails and gaps between trees creating countless nooks Discovering any of Amanda's belongings required absolute focus. About an hour after confirming the bicycle's location, a search group, following a trail angling south of the crevice, a rarely used route with gravelly dirt surface and many low bushes, noted something brightly colored amid the dry leaves. One member bent down to check and quickly recognized it as a white and green cycling helmet, matching the style and size the family described Amanda usually wearing. The information was immediately reported to the command post, and a second scene was cordoned off to avoid disturbance. The distance between the helmet and bicycle immediately drew investigators' attention. Initial measurements showed the two pieces of evidence were over a mile apart as the crow flies, and even farther following natural trails. This raised a critical question: if Amanda had an accident, what caused the helmet to fall so far from the bicycle? In recorded cycling accidents in Texas' low hills, a detached helmet typically lies near the impact site, unless the rider was thrown with extreme force. But the bicycle scene showed no signs of such a powerful fall, no long skid marks, no physical breakage, and the bike appeared simply placed or dropped from very low height. A veteran investigator on the team immediately raised the issue: if the helmet came off during an accident, it would lie near the bike, or at least within a few meters if the victim was ejected. But its position so far away, on flat ground unobstructed by trees or complex terrain, made natural falling nearly impossible. Moreover, the helmet showed no signs of heavy impact, no cracks, no dents, no major scrapes or scratches. Another highly unusual detail was the chin strap remaining intact, not stretched or twisted in a strong accident. This part is easily affected. When the technical team arrived to document the second scene, they photographed the entire area from multiple angles and conducted preliminary analysis. The helmet lay on a thin layer of golden leaves, slightly tilted to one side, but not sunk deeply into the ground. If it fell from height or was thrown down, there should at least be an imprint on the ground showing impact force, or leaves displaced in an arc pattern. But none of that appeared. The helmet rested strangely still, as if gently placed or dropped without significant force. One Texar member suggested checking wind direction that day in case the helmet was blown away. However, investigators quickly ruled this out. A cycling helmet is not a lightweight object, easily carried a mile by wind. Moreover, the uneven terrain with interspersed trees would block wind, and if blown, the helmet would snag in bushes or drift only a few meters, not this far. All initial analysis led to the same conclusion: the helmet's position did not fit any natural accident scenario. Police, after mapping both the bicycle and helmet scenes on the same area map, noticed another oddity. The two pieces of evidence lay on different routes, not in a straight line, not following the same direction of travel, and not reflecting any logical sequence of a cyclist's incident. If Amanda fell or had an accident, bike and helmet should be in the same area or along a continuous trajectory. But here, the bike was in the crevice, while the helmet was farther away on flat ground, on a different trail. This distance and separation led investigators to lean toward a troubling possibility: third-party intervention. This did not mean confirmed criminal activity, but it indicated the scene was not natural. Someone may have moved the bicycle, or the helmet, or both. If only one piece of evidence was in an unusual position, it could be explained by rare natural possibilities or search team estimation errors. But when both pieces were inconsistent with accident physics and lacked accompanying physical traces, the probability of coincidence was nearly zero. Texar continued scanning the area around the helmet. They looked for footprints, tire marks, drag marks, or any other objects. But like the bicycle scene, the area around the helmet was unusually clean. No signs of human movement. This further heightened the sense that the helmet had been carried and placed there by someone at an undetermined time. Investigators compiled preliminary findings and reviewed all data collected since Amanda's disappearance. In cases like this, each new discovery must connect to the overall context. But the helmet's appearance, far from the bicycle, and in overly intact condition, only reinforced what police suspected upon finding the bike in the crevice. No signs indicated a natural accident. That afternoon, as Texas sunlight poured over the red gravel strips and oak branches cast long shadows on the ground, the search team withdrew to the command post with a feeling of both advancing a step and entering a new layer of ambiguity. They had found the second piece of evidence, an extremely important detail, but instead of narrowing suspicion, it expanded the investigation into possibilities no one wanted. The scene began revealing signs of staging, signaling that Amanda Hale's disappearance was not as simple as a forest accident as many had initially hoped. The discovery of the bicycle and helmet in unrelated positions made the investigation team realize that continuing field searches without clear direction would quickly reach a dead end. They needed data capable of narrowing the time, location, and behavior of Amanda the morning she vanished. Therefore, as soon as the technical team completed processing the evidence scenes, a specialized group was assigned to shift focus to electronic data analysis, an increasingly critical information source in missing persons cases since the late 2000s. Amanda's laptop was the first device examined. Her Toshiba laptop had all contents fully backed up, including work schedules, emails, personal documents, and common applications from 2010. Analysis showed Amanda used the computer fairly regularly, mainly for office work and email processing. No records indicated she searched for information related to leaving, long-distance travel, or any unusual topics in the days before disappearance. Her last access occurred the evening before, when operation history showed she only checked a few work emails, read a weather report, and viewed her workout schedule for the following week. No signs of stress, negative information searches, or psychological changes reflected in online behavior. Investigators continued analyzing emails, including exchanges with friends and colleagues. Content near the disappearance time showed Amanda maintained stable social activity, casual conversations, planning a weekend dinner, and responding to work questions. No farewell emails, expressions of fear, or indications of serious conflict. Some unread emails were typical spam or advertisements. Next, the investigation team checked Amanda's bank accounts and payment cards. In the 3 months before disappearance, her spending aligned with normal lifestyle, groceries, bill payments, some fitness equipment purchases, and small dining transactions. No large expenditures, no unusual transactions in the early morning or night before, and especially no sudden cash withdrawals. If Amanda intended to leave home voluntarily for an extended period, a possibility police had to consider early on, she would certainly need cash or prepay travel arrangements. However, all accounts showed no significant changes. This helped reinforce that Amanda had no plans to leave Horseshoe Bay. A crucial part of electronic data analysis came from cell tower records. Though 2010 positioning technology was less accurate than later GPS systems, mobile towers still provided valuable information, especially in determining when a phone lost signal. AT&T provided records of the time and location of the last tower Amanda's phone connected to. Investigators determined the final signal was recorded the morning of disappearance from a tower west of Horseshoe Bay. This time frame matched witness data of Amanda cycling from home and aligned with the direction where the bicycle was found. However, just minutes later, the phone lost signal completely. No further connections occurred, despite Amanda's phone battery having enough power for several more hours. The sudden signal loss raised multiple questions. Was the phone manually turned off, damaged by impact, or placed in a deeper no-signal area? But the West Horseshoe Bay area, though with many low forest zones, rarely lost signal completely over large ranges. Only terrain-shielded spots or deep in rock crevices caused such strong signal loss. This strangely coincided with the bicycle found in a crevice. However, if the phone fell with the bike, it should have been found there, or at least signal analysis would show a few more minutes of activity post-fall. This could not be confirmed, but the data became the first sign Amanda's phone was disconnected unnaturally. During mobile data analysis, the team also examined family members' phones. They had no reason to suspect anyone at this stage, but understanding movement patterns of all directly involved was always necessary. Data from husband Ryan Hale's phone showed he was home during the time Amanda left. However, cross-referencing signal maps, investigators noted an anomaly throughout the morning. Ryan's location data had several short gaps where the phone did not connect to the usual neighborhood towers. This was not considered evidence of wrongdoing, as temporary signal loss sometimes occurs at coverage edges. However, the frequency of these gaps prompted investigators to note for further review. Additionally, Ryan's calling and texting activity that morning was sparse, only increasing as the family grew worried about Amanda's non-return. This matched statements and suggested nothing definitive. Furthermore, one investigator checked security cameras from nearby homes, though most 2010 cameras served only internal recording with limited angles. A few homes had front door motion cameras, but none captured far enough to record Amanda that morning. Cameras along main roads also yielded no noteworthy data. Small bicycles and fast movement made subject identification nearly impossible with equipment and image quality of the time. Data from Amanda's laptop and phone, when combined, led investigators to several key conclusions. Amanda did not search for leaving home information or show unusual online behavior changes. Her bank accounts had no suspicious transactions, and her phone lost signal in the western area very shortly after leaving home. When all factors were placed together, the overall picture became clearer. Amanda left home intending a short bike ride, with routine habits, information, and gear as always. But in the brief time afterward, something occurred, causing her to deviate from her normal route and vanish completely. Electronic data showed no proactive decision or preparation from Amanda, but revealed critical details about when she stopped communicating, and small anomalies in data from close associates. By the end of that analysis session, investigators understood electronic data did not fully answer "Where is Amanda?" but it narrowed part of the disappearance timeframe, though not enough to envision what happened in the brief moments after she left home. Therefore, when the technical team reported completing backup of the spy pen seized from the bedroom, investigators immediately shifted focus to this highly sensitive evidence. The small device, seemingly just an innocuous pen, had in many missing persons cases provided information unobtainable from any other source. Amanda's spy pen was a common late 2000s model, low memory, short recording duration, but capable of faithfully capturing nearby audio. Technicians opened the device, extracted all raw data, then transferred it to the audio analysis lab for processing. Due to limited capacity, most audio files were recorded in the few weeks before Amanda's disappearance. This narrowed the analysis scope while increasing the likelihood relevant recordings directly tied to events preceding the incident. When the audio file list appeared, the investigation team immediately noticed a mix of meaningless segments, door openings, footsteps, drawer closings, and segments with clear dialogue. In the initial scan, they eliminated environmental noise-only clips, but in several segments, Amanda's voice appeared, sometimes clear, sometimes intermittent. Notably, 3 dialogue segments prompted the analysis team to flag for extraction and noise processing. Amanda speaking with a man. The first of these recordings lasted nearly 4 minutes. After noise filtering, Amanda's voice became clearer, calm but with an intimate tone rarely heard in ordinary family conversations. The oddity was Amanda speaking in a restrained voice, as if trying to keep volume low. The man's responding voice was warm and low, sometimes hesitant but clearly close. The recording content showed no conflict or work discussion. Instead, it was private, like a conversation between two people in an established relationship. In the second segment, nearly 6 minutes long, the man's voice became clearer. After the technical team enhanced volume and reduced background, they identified a key moment: Amanda calling the man Josh. The way she said his name, softly but intimately, made investigators understand this was not just a casual acquaintance. By the third recording, Amanda's tone changed significantly. Her voice became tense, mixed with hesitation. One sentence was partially obscured, but still enough for the investigation team to note. "I don't want things to get more complicated." The man was silent for a few seconds, then responded in a low voice, but the key phrase "I already told you" was enough to suggest some ongoing issue between them. Something Amanda seemed worried about. After processing these 3 segments, the next task was to identify who Josh was. The investigation team cross-referenced the voice with a list of people who had contact with Amanda in the 2 years prior. Through home repair records, maintenance reports, and a few old emails, they found a matching name, Josh Keller, a plumbing and electrical contractor who had performed repairs on the heating and cooling system and met Amanda multiple times, as she was the direct contact for project progress. Keller lived in Marble Falls, not far from Horseshoe Bay, and in 2009-2010, he had multiple occasions to visit Amanda's home for minor maintenance tasks. When placing the recordings alongside this information, the picture gradually became clearer. Amanda was having an extramarital affair with Keller. No one in the family mentioned it, and no trace of the relationship existed in emails or text messages. The fact that the relationship was maintained through in-person conversations and left no digital footprint led investigators to conclude that Amanda intentionally kept a high level of secrecy, or both had agreed to avoid traceable information. From here, motive became the new focus. An extramarital affair opened a range of possibilities the investigation had not previously considered. Could there have been an argument? Did Amanda want to end it, or did Keller want to hide something? Some recordings showed Amanda anxious about everything being discovered, further raising suspicion that the relationship had entered a tense phase. However, none of the spy pen segments showed direct threats, violence, or major arguments. Another question arose. Who placed the spy pen in the bedroom? If Amanda placed the device, the motive could be to monitor someone else. If someone else placed it, the situation would change entirely. However, the data was insufficient to answer this. Though no criminal act could yet be concluded, the spy pen had clarified something crucial. Amanda was keeping a part of her personal life hidden from everyone, and a man named Josh Keller was directly involved in the final weeks before she vanished. This was the new investigative direction police were forced to prioritize in the next steps. After the spy pen analysis team confirmed the relationship between Amanda and Josh Keller, investigators were compelled to re-examine key statements provided in the initial phase. Ryan Hale, Amanda's husband, was the source of the critical timeline for the morning Amanda disappeared, and many details in his statement had been treated as foundational for reconstructing the sequence of events. But with the new information, the agency understood that every timestamp and described action from Ryan needed verification for accuracy. This reanalysis did not stem from an assumption of guilt, but from the requirement to ensure all data aligned with recorded reality. First, the investigation team focused on cross-referencing Ryan's statement about being home with cell tower data. Ryan claimed he was home all morning, never left the area, and his phone remained normally active. However, the ATAN data table, already processed and reviewed by the electronic analysis team, showed Ryan's phone did not connect to the nearby home tower between 7:42 and 8:16 a.m. This created a significant contradiction. If he was truly home, his phone should have continuously connected to the local tower unless turned off or temporarily out of coverage. The agency rechecked with AT&T to rule out interference or technical issues. The carrier confirmed no signal interruptions in Horseshoe Bay West that morning. Thus, the disappearance from Ryan's phone system could not be explained by technical factors. Ryan may have left home, or the phone may have been turned off or placed in a signal-restricted state, both possibilities contradicting his initial statement. This inconsistency was noted as the first anomaly in Ryan's account. Next, the team examined call history. Ryan said he began calling Amanda as soon as he noticed she was later than usual. But call logs showed the first call occurred nearly an hour later than stated. This was not accusatory inconsistency, but it raised questions about the accuracy of Ryan's memory and his mental state when giving the statement. In missing persons cases, delays between perceived worry and search actions often reflect specific circumstances, but when statements and data do not match, investigators must weigh the objectivity of each detail. Text message history revealed a similar inconsistency. Ryan claimed he sent Amanda messages asking where she was quite early, but the first message was recorded significantly later. This gap could result from Ryan being too anxious and misremembering timestamps, but in the context of mobile signal inconsistencies, it became a detail to note for overall evaluation. Beyond electronic data, the agency examined Ryan's described morning action. He said he was busy fixing a few things in the garage and didn't notice Amanda leave. But during the home search, police found no tools or items in a half-used state in the garage. Ryan explained he might have cleaned up right after fixing, but the time frame he described was not reasonable for both repairing and fully cleaning. Especially, some old items he said needed fixing showed no signs of recent handling. Investigators also compared Ryan's statement with neighbor accounts. One nearby witness stated she saw the Hale family's silver pickup leave the area that morning, around before 8 a.m. She was not certain of the exact minute, but her description of the vehicle color, license plate, and departure direction matched Ryan's truck. This directly contradicted Ryan's claim that he did not leave home. Though the witness statement was not yet hard evidence, when aligned with Ryan's phone signal loss in the same time frame, the contradiction became noteworthy. After the spy pen analysis team confirmed the relationship between Amanda and Josh Keller, investigators were compelled to re-examine key statements provided in the initial phase. Ryan Hale, Amanda's husband, was the source of the critical timeline for the morning Amanda disappeared, and many details in his statement had been treated as foundational for reconstructing the sequence of events. But with the new information, the agency understood that every timestamp and described action from Ryan needed verification for accuracy. This reanalysis did not stem from an assumption of guilt, but from the requirement to ensure all data aligned with recorded reality. First, the investigation team focused on cross-referencing Ryan's statement about being home with cell tower data. Ryan claimed he was home all morning, never left the area, and his phone remained normally active. However, the ATAN data table, already processed and reviewed by the electronic analysis team, showed Ryan's phone did not connect to the nearby home tower between 7:42 and 8:16 a.m. This created a significant contradiction. If he was truly home, his phone should have continuously connected to the local tower unless turned off or temporarily out of coverage. The agency rechecked with AT&T to rule out interference or technical issues. The carrier confirmed no signal interruptions in Horseshoe Bay West that morning. Thus, the disappearance from Ryan's phone system could not be explained by technical factors. Ryan may have left home, or the phone may have been turned off or placed in a signal-restricted state, both possibilities contradicting his initial statement. This inconsistency was noted as the first anomaly in Ryan's account. Next, the team examined call history. Ryan said he began calling Amanda as soon as he noticed she was later than usual, but call logs showed the first call occurred nearly an hour later than stated. This was not accusatory inconsistency, but it raised questions about the accuracy of Ryan's memory and his mental state when giving the statement. In missing persons cases, delays between perceived worry and search actions often reflect specific circumstances, but when statements and data do not match, investigators must weigh the objectivity of each detail. Text message history revealed a similar inconsistency. Ryan claimed he sent Amanda messages asking where she was quite early, but the first message was recorded significantly later. This gap could result from Ryan being too anxious and misremembering timestamps, but in the context of mobile signal inconsistencies, it became a detail to note for overall evaluation. Beyond electronic data, the agency examined Ryan's described morning action. He said he was busy fixing a few things in the garage and didn't notice Amanda leave. But during the home search, Police found no tools or items in a half-used state in the garage. Ryan explained he might have cleaned up right after fixing, but the time frame he described was not reasonable for both repairing and fully cleaning. Especially, some old items he said needed fixing showed no signs of recent handling. Investigators also compared Ryan's statement with neighbor accounts. One nearby witness stated she saw the Hale family's silver pickup leave the area that morning, around before 8 a.m. She was not certain of the exact minute, but her description of the vehicle color, license plate, and departure direction matched Ryan's truck. This directly contradicted Ryan's claim that he did not leave home. Though the witness statement was not yet hard evidence, when aligned with Ryan's phone signal loss in the same time frame, the contradiction became noteworthy. The investigation team did not yet treat this as ironclad alibi, as timesheets can be procedural or filled post facto. Therefore, they requested Keller's Michigan financial transaction data. Early on the morning of Amanda's disappearance, a card statement recorded a fuel purchase at a Grand Rapids gas station. An hour later was a coffee purchase at a convenience store near Keller's usual route, before reaching the work site. These small transactions, though simple, held value because most included store camera images, allowing verification of time and person making the payment. When the Michigan police assisted in extracting data, they provided two clear images, one of Keller at a gas station at 6:58 a.m. and one of him at a convenience store around 7:40 a.m. These images perfectly matched the work schedule confirmed by his company and proved Keller was in Michigan on the morning Amanda went missing. The investigation team then turned to phone location data. Although the 2010 tracking system was not as accurate as later technology, cell tower data still allowed for determining the area where the phone connected. Records from the carrier showed Keller's phone connecting to towers in the Grand Rapids area throughout the morning and afternoon. There were no connections appearing in Texas from April to June, the period when Amanda disappeared, which fell entirely within this time frame. In particular, at the exact time Amanda's phone signal was lost, when the investigation team believed she encountered trouble, Keller's phone was connected to a tower more than 1,200 miles away from Horseshoe Bay. To ensure accuracy, the technical team analyzed Keller's mobile data habits over several weeks. The phone consistently connected within the Grand Rapids area, with no signs of unusual travel, no unreasonably prolonged signal gaps. This pointed to two possibilities. Either Keller was truly in Michigan continuously, or someone else was carrying his phone. But the second possibility was quickly ruled out when Keller's company provided additional internal emails, work correspondence, and confirmation of his participation in an internal online meeting on the afternoon Amanda disappeared. The email content and send times aligned perfectly with Keller being at his workplace. Financial transactions, location data, timesheets, camera images, and coworker information all led to one clear conclusion. Josh Keller was not in Texas at the time Amanda went missing. The geographical distance, travel time, and communication traces left no room to doubt that he had secretly traveled to Texas and returned to Michigan within 24 hours. However, even though Keller's alibi was established, the investigation team did not overlook the value of the information related to the relationship recorded by the spy pen. Amanda's emotional connection with Keller remained important data for understanding her psychological context and interactions in the weeks before she disappeared. But Keller, based on the actual evidence, was not someone who could have directly caused the event that morning. Verifying Josh Keller's alibi helped narrow the scope of suspicion and brought the investigation team back to the most critical starting point: the scene where Amanda's bicycle and helmet were found. Initially, the search team approached this area, assuming it might be an accident in the woods. However, after compiling data from electronic devices, Ryan Hale's contradictory statements, and eliminating Keller from suspicion, the authorities decided to invite independent scene analysis experts to reevaluate the entire area in greater detail. The expert team included 2 terrain analysts, a mountain biking accident specialist, and an investigator with years of experience in missing persons cases in the Texas Hill Country. They began by re-examining the specific context where the bicycle was found, a rock crevice less than 2 meters wide, about 1.5 meters deep, with gently sloping terrain and many small tree roots covering the ground. When the search team discovered the bicycle, it was positioned almost upright, leaning against a small bush, with no long skid marks from above, no plowed-up soil, and no parts of the bike bent or deeply scratched. The accident specialist confirmed that in most mountain biking falls, if the rider hit an obstacle or lost balance while descending, the bike would have a clear trajectory, either flying forward or flipping sideways, leaving friction marks on the ground or rocks. However, Amanda's bike showed no accident trajectory whatsoever. The ground surface where the bike lay was nearly intact, with no gouges or ruts. This indicated the bike had been placed in its current position by hand, rather than remaining after a crash. The terrain experts also assessed the slope of the path above the crevice. If Amanda had been descending and lost control, the bike would have left at least a series of skid marks or displaced dirt and rocks to the sides. When they checked the area above, the surface remained intact, with only a thin layer of dry leaves and dust undisturbed in any direction. One expert concluded, "There are no signs of strong movement from above. There is no possibility the bike plunged down from the slope." In parallel with the bicycle analysis, the expert team returned to the location where the helmet was found, more than a mile away. At that spot, the ground was flat, trees were sparse, and there was no strong wind capable of pushing the helmet to this position. They re-examined the entire area around the helmet. The dry leaves under it were not displaced in a falling trajectory, and the chin strap was intact. According to the accident specialist, if the helmet had been flung off in a severe crash, the strap would typically be stretched or slightly twisted. Amanda's helmet showed none of these signs. From the two separate scenes, the analysis team reconstructed an overall diagram. The bicycle was in a rock crevice that could not be entered via a natural trajectory. The helmet was in a position too far away, with no falling traces, unrelated to the bike's location. When plotting both positions on a terrain map, the only logical route a cyclist could take to pass through both spots did not align with Amanda's usual path. This led the experts to conclude that the two pieces of evidence did not form a natural chain of events. Another notable point was the unusually clean condition of the bicycle. One expert observed, if Amanda had fallen in the middle of this forest, the bike should have dirt, soil, tree roots, or at least some stronger scrape marks. But the bike looks like it was set down from a low height, not thrown or flung. This fully aligned with the search team's initial assessment that it did not resemble an accident. Furthermore, when examining the nearby area where the bike was found, there were no signs of body contact. No scratches on rocks, no shoe skid marks, no fibers or material from clothing. If Amanda had truly fallen here, her body would have left at least some impact marks. The completely clean area made the possibility of a natural accident extremely low. The expert team also considered the possibility that Amanda encountered an unexpected situation, such as fainting, losing balance, or encountering wildlife. But the scene showed no traces of large animals, no disturbed soil, no unusual footprints. The terrain where the bike was found was also not a high-risk area for slipping. From the compiled data, the analysis team reached a unanimous important conclusion: the scene was deliberately staged. The bicycle and helmet were placed in two different positions, not following any natural movement path. There were no signs of an accident, no random environmental factors, and both pieces of evidence lacked physical marks consistent with an unintended incident. The expert's final conclusion was forwarded to the investigation team. The possibility of a natural accident was completely ruled out. What was found in the Horseshoe Bay forest area did not describe a bike crash. Instead, it indicated someone had brought the bike and helmet to two different locations and deliberately created the impression that Amanda had left the trail and met with misfortune. The failure to find a body or any physical traces related to Amanda prevented the investigation team from determining the true nature of the incident. Was this a kidnapping, a murder, or something entirely different. In many missing persons cases in the Texas Hill Country, bodies are often found within a few miles of where evidence appears, but with Amanda, weeks of searches by people, search dogs, helicopters, and boats yielded no results. No decomposition odor, no clothing signs, no other personal belongings appeared. This was extremely unusual, almost contrary to every typical behavior and trace pattern in outdoor missing persons cases. Regarding Ryan Hale, although his statements contradicted electronic data, there was no direct evidence showing he was involved in his wife's disappearance. Any suspicion based on these contradictions remained at the possibility level, insufficient to obtain expanded search warrants or detention orders. In the 2010 legal context, police could not proceed with deeper investigative measures without solid grounds, to avoid infringing on civil rights. The lack of physical evidence kept all lines of suspicion related to Ryan within monitoring limits, unable to advance further. The fact that Amanda had an extramarital relationship with Josh Keller had led the investigation team to hope it might uncover a new motive. But after confirming Keller's absolute alibi, this direction was completely eliminated. The contractor from Michigan had no capability or opportunity to appear in Horseshoe Bay on the day Amanda went missing. Eliminating Keller from suspicion meant the investigation team lost one of the very few initial anchors to expand information. Meanwhile, the spy pen recordings, though important, contained no content directly related to conflict or threats. There were no aggressive words, no hints of violence, and it was impossible to determine whose purpose the recording served. In the investigation file, the spy pen device only provided psychological context, not incriminating evidence. Although it showed Amanda's personal life was more complex than the image of an ordinary woman in the Hill Country, it did not bring the investigation closer to identifying who was responsible for her disappearance. Additionally, the forest area where the bicycle was found was too vast and lacked security cameras. In 2010, Horseshoe Bay had not developed public camera systems like larger cities. Residential cameras were rare, and image quality was often too low for detailed identification. This prevented police from reconstructing anyone's movement path, including Amanda, Ryan, or any stranger who might have appeared near that time. All investigative paths led to unanswered questions. The bicycle was placed in the rock crevice, but who placed it? The helmet was unusually far away. But how did it get there? Amanda's phone signal was lost too early. What was the cause? Ryan had many contradictions. But was there specific evidence? Not a single question had a strong enough answer to shift the case to criminal investigation. The local authorities, after more than 3 months of continuous searching, held multiple internal meetings to assess the feasibility of remaining investigative directions. However, the absence of a body prevented them from establishing the element of a crime occurring. No body, no blood, no witnesses, no cameras, no drag or movement traces. Legally, the case could only be classified as missing with undetermined cause, not categorized as a criminal case. The investigation team's final reports clearly stated, no direct evidence showed Amanda Hale left Horseshoe Bay voluntarily. No evidence showed she suffered a natural accident. No evidence showed any criminal act had occurred. But paradoxically, every sign indicated an accident was impossible. In the 4th month since Amanda went missing, after all local resources had been maximally utilized without new results, the Burnett County Sheriff's Office was forced to make a difficult decision, temporarily close the active investigation file and transfer the case to the unsolved missing persons category. When Amanda Hale's missing persons file was officially placed in the unsolved missing persons category, all active investigative activities in Burnett County essentially ceased. However, under Texas procedures, long-term missing persons cases are never completely abandoned. By early 2011, the entire file, including investigation reports, terrain diagrams, scene notes, spy pen data, phone extractions, statements, and stored evidence, was transferred to the Cold Case Unit of the Texas Department of Public Safety. This handover marked a new phase for the case, no longer an urgent search, but a file awaiting new leads from technology, witnesses, or unexpected developments. When the cold case team took over, they conducted a standard review of the file. This included rereading all statements, comparing timelines, reanalyzing the crime scene diagram, and assessing the reliability of each type of evidence. However, in 2011, technical analysis capabilities were still limited. Vehicle data recovery technology was at a basic level. Devices like Ryan Hale's pickup truck did not store the detailed data volumes seen in newer models. Cell phone location analysis was also restricted by cell tower data, which was insufficient to reconstruct a detailed route. Many questions lingering from 2010 remained unanswered, even though the file had been handed over to the state's specialized unit. In the initial review reports, Texas DPS noted several points of suspicion: staged crime scene, unusual phone signal loss patterns, inconsistencies in Ryan Hale's statements, but lacked evidence to open a criminal investigation. No body, no DNA, no direct witnesses, no surveillance video. No single element was strong enough to break the deadlock that the original investigation had encountered. The cold case unit concluded that, although there were many indicators suggesting Amanda's disappearance was not random, they could not act beyond their authority or evidence standards. During the 2012-2014 period, the file was re-examined multiple times on DPS's cyclical schedule. Each review added new notes, but no specific direction emerged. One investigator wrote in a 2013 report that all leads end in dead ends, except for some behavioral suspicions, but suspicion is not evidence. That report reflected the file's overall state. Something was clearly abnormal, but there was no foothold to advance further. At that time, technologies for searching for bodies underground, thermal pulse detection, or satellite image analysis were not sufficiently developed or widely applied at the state level. Search drones were not yet in common use. The dense forested areas around where the bicycle was found remained the least thoroughly searched zones. Although the initial search team had swept the area multiple times, the terrain with countless rock crevices, small hollows, and tangled roots made overlooking spots unavoidable. But without new technology, Cold Case could not launch a second large-scale search. The 2015-2017 period saw a gradual decline in update reports. Those who had participated in the original investigation transferred or retired. Dozens of other missing persons cases across Texas continued pouring into the Cold Case unit, dispersing resources further. Amanda's file was not forgotten, but it was no longer in the high-priority group. No special meetings, no new leads, no tips from the public. The case was enveloped in silence. In internal records, phrases like "no changes," "insufficient basis to reopen investigation" appeared repeatedly. Nevertheless, the Cold Case unit maintained its biennial review process. In the 2017 review, a young Dallas investigator, newly transferred to the unit, noted that Amanda's file had many anomalies compared to typical missing persons cases. He emphasized that the bicycle and helmet scene was inconsistent with off-road accidents and wrote that if location tracking or vehicle data retrieval technology improves, this file should be re-examined. However, the note was simply added to the file, with no follow-up action, because at that time, DPS technology had not yet reached the level needed for vehicle data reconstruction or advanced analysis. From 2018 to 2020, Amanda's file was occasionally mentioned in internal meetings, mostly in discussions about potential new methods, but there were still no breakthroughs and no leads from the community. Amanda's family occasionally contacted the Cold Case unit for updates, but the response remained virtually unchanged over a decade. "We will reopen as soon as we have new data or suitable technology." During these years, most of the file remained untouched in DPS storage, occasionally pulled for review and then returned to its place. Even so, the lack of progress did not mean the case was completely ignored. Cold Case maintained passive monitoring. Whenever a report of an unidentified body came in from Central Texas, Amanda's file was pulled for comparison. but no matches resulted. No DNA, no identifiable personal items. The comparisons almost never yielded anything. By late 2020, Amanda Hale's disappearance had reached its 10-year mark. In DPS cold case files, it was one of the strangest: no traces, no witnesses, no clear motive, no body, no claimant calls, no community leads. A complete vanishing in broad daylight in a quiet residential area. Despite the prolonged stalemate, the file was still marked, particularly anomalous, and younger unit members, those accustomed to working with new technology, occasionally reviewed it as an analytical exercise. But even with sporadic reviews, the file did not advance. The 2011-2020 period passed in prolonged silence, with no changes, no additional evidence, and no events strong enough to shake its unsolved status. The Amanda Hale case, over a decade, existed as a void, an anomalous file retained by its own inscrutability, and by the sense that the answers were still out there, beyond the reach of the technology and data of that era. In early 2021, when Texas DPS's statewide investigative technology upgrade program was rolled out, a group of old files was selected for reevaluation using new methods, and Amanda Hale's missing persons file, seemingly dormant for over a decade, was unexpectedly placed on the priority analysis list. Texas Ranger Miguel Garza, with extensive experience in digital data handling, was assigned to directly reopen the file. In his initial days accessing the old documents, Garza recognized that most of the 2010 investigative limitations stemmed from the era's technology. Spy pen audio recordings were too noisy to hear clearly. Cell tower data only allowed rough coverage area identification, and telematics from older vehicles were nearly impossible to extract. Thus, his first step was to re-examine all original data sources to assess recoverability with new technology. With the advanced audio analysis system deployed by Texas DPS in 2021, previously unintelligible files full of static could now be layered and processed in depth. Garza fed all spy pen audio data into a multi-layer recovery program, enabling background noise removal, low-frequency band restructuring, and voice separation by frequency contours. The results did not produce new content unseen in 2010, but clarified subtle changes in Amanda's voice during phone conversations, tension, hesitation, and long pauses. Factors that could reflect the victim's psychological state before disappearing. Segments once deemed too unclear for context now revealed Amanda tending to lower her voice at multiple points and using deliberate half-sentences, indicating discomfort while speaking inside her own home. In parallel with audio analysis, Garza moved to the cell tower data, which had been evaluated very superficially in 2010 due to technical constraints. The new cell sector reconstruction system allowed antenna direction, signal strength, tower load, and other variables to be modeled for real movement simulation. When applied to Amanda's phone data, results showed her signal abruptly stopping at 7:23 a.m. in a way that did not match any natural signal congestion patterns the system had recorded. Mathematical modeling yielded two most plausible scenarios. Either the phone was suddenly powered off, or it was placed in a confined space with strong signal-blocking properties like a metal truck bed or trunk. This was entirely different from the 2010 conclusion that Amanda entered a no-coverage area. Ryan's cell tower data was also reanalyzed, and the system showed his phone's signal loss period was not due to leaving coverage, but entering a narrow or enclosed area. Models indicated a sharp drop in transmit power during that time, which only occurs in metallic environments, while also suggesting Ryan was not staying put at home, as he had previously stated. After completing cell tower analysis, Garza requested telematics extraction from Ryan's Chevrolet Silverado, a task nearly impossible in 2010 due to lacking compatible readers. With upgraded telematics tools, the technical team could read deep data from the vehicle's central controller. Engine start-stop times, to the thousandth of a second, door statuses, vibration sensor data, wheel movements, gear shifts, and even raw GPS from the OnStar chip, despite the service not being activated that year. The retrieved data showed the truck starting at 7:50 a.m., a timestamp completely contradicting Ryan's statement that he did not leave the house that morning. Vibration sensors indicated short movement near the home, while the system recorded a pressure surge and temperature change in the truck bed, consistent with water spraying or cleaning. Consecutive door open-close events showed someone entering and exiting the cabin multiple times over 2 minutes, which did not appear in the original statements. When the three data sources, enhanced audio, improved cell tower simulation, and pickup telematics were cross-referenced, Garza began reconstructing a timeline based on objective movement logic rather than statements, as in 2010. For Amanda, the reconstructed timeline included leaving home around 7:15 a.m., traveling a short distance along her usual route, then her phone signal vanishing abruptly at 7:23 in a pattern-matching device disablement or enclosure. For Ryan, data showed his phone leaving stable connection at 7:42, the truck starting at 7:50, movement out of the residential area before 8 a.m., and returning to signal at 8:16. These markers not only deviated from old statements, but created a notable gap, a time window previously unavailable with any tool's precision. Garza noted that the two movements, Amanda's sudden signal disappearance and Ryan's truck leaving home, fell within an unusually short span too close to ignore. In synthesizing all analysis, Garza concluded in his reinvestigation report that the 2021 technical results had completely transformed understanding of the morning Amanda vanished. The data did not provide a final answer, but clarified that actual events differed vastly from 2010 assumptions, and reconstructing both Amanda's and Ryan's paths had opened a new, far more accurate time frame than before. Technology did not answer the ultimate question, but it had reshaped the entire case context, and from here, the investigation could enter a completely different phase. While Ranger Garza focused on restructuring the timeline based on technical analysis, another investigative direction quietly opened at the Texas DPS Forensic Lab in Austin. In 2010, DNA samples collected from Amanda's vehicle, including the door handle, steering wheel, gear shift, and glove compartment, were tested according to the standards of the time, but yielded no clear results, mainly due to fragmented samples mixed with environmental DNA. However, by 2021, with next-generation sequencing and ultra-sensitive amplification techniques for degraded samples, the lab decided to rerun all the old samples. The results revealed a finding absent from any 2010 report: a foreign DNA fragment inside Amanda's vehicle, specifically on the inner edge of the glove compartment, a location previously overlooked because the likelihood of leaving traces inside was considered too low. This DNA was not complete enough to identify an individual, but sufficient to create a partial profile, and when entered into the expanded CODIS system, it produced a partial match with an unidentified profile stored since 2004 in Houston, related to an unsolved assault. The lab did not draw immediate conclusions, as the incomplete match implied more multiple possibilities. It could be partial DNA from the same person, a close relative of the 2004 sample, cross-contamination from another piece of evidence, or simply a random coincidence due to the low number of markers. When the information reached Ranger Garza, he immediately requested deeper analysis of this DNA sample. Using new algorithms, forensic specialists reconstructed a potential DNA map, cross-referenced matchable regions with Houston's population from the early 2000s, and analyzed whether the DNA originated from a male, female, or mixed source. Preliminary results showed the DNA belonged to neither Amanda nor Ryan, nor did it match any relatives who had provided comparison samples in the file. This made the DNA an independent piece of evidence, rare enough to potentially steer the case in an entirely different direction. However, the partial DNA raised a question: how did a sample partially matching an unidentified criminal profile from Houston in 2004 end up in Amanda's vehicle in Horseshoe Bay in 2010? The lab conducted contextual biological analysis of the sample, searching for signs indicating the activity that deposited the DNA: touch, sweat, bodily fluid, or simple transfer from another surface. Based on degradation levels and remaining protein ratios, experts concluded it was highly likely transferred DNA from a hand or object, not a trace of violent activity. More notably, the sample's location, the inner edge of the glove compartment, indicated the depositor had to open the compartment and touch the inner surface firmly enough to leave a mark. Ranger Garza added this question to his verification list. Had Amanda ever given anyone a ride? The family confirmed she rarely carried outsiders and never strangers. Ryan stated he occasionally used his wife's vehicle for nearby errands, but did not recall letting anyone else inside. For Garza, foreign DNA in a missing persons context could be a critical lead, but it might also be an irrelevant minor trace, like hundreds of DNA marks found in personal vehicles with no investigative value. He decided not to rule out any possibility and requested the lab simulate the probability of DNA transfer via indirect contact. Forensic specialists used a Texas environment DNA decay model, low humidity, high temperature, to assess how long the sample could have persisted. Results indicated the DNA could have been present for months, even over a year before Amanda's disappearance. This opened another avenue. The DNA might predate the incident and be unrelated to the main event. Yet one detail Garza could not ignore: the inner glove compartment edge was not a typical site for passive DNA. Normally, indirect transfer DNA would appear on the steering wheel, door handle, or gear shift, areas of constant human interaction. DNA inside the glove compartment suggested two main scenarios. Either someone opened and rummaged through it, or a hand carrying the DNA accidentally touched inside while searching for something. Garza requested re-examination of the glove compartment's condition via 2010 photos. Though the original team detected no signs of forceful rummaging, Garza noticed a minor detail in the photos: Amanda's insurance documents and registration booklet were slightly askew. Unlike the family's description of her keeping them neat and centered, this was not proof of disturbance, but Garza noted it for further cross-checking. Additionally, he requested the 2004 Houston case file to review the recorded crime. Judicial Archives provided details. The 2004 sample came from an assault where the suspect was never identified, and the DNA was the only trace recovered. Though only a partial match, the two DNA samples appearing 6 years apart, over 200 miles distant, raised the question: did they belong to the same unidentified individual? Or was it a statistical coincidence, common with partial profiles, especially with few markers? Garza requested anthropological probability analysis. Results showed a true match. Conclusion was not strong enough, but could not be dismissed. The lab outlined 3 equally likely scenarios. 1. The DNA belonged to the same person as the 2004 profile. 2. It belonged to a close relative of the original sample. 3. Random match due to heavy degradation. This made Ranger Garza more cautious. He did not view the DNA as accusatory evidence, but as a variable that could derail the investigation if mishandled. Thus, Garza focused on context: when the DNA appeared, who had access to the vehicle, whether evidence showed Amanda or Ryan traveling through Houston during that period, and whether the DNA could relate to pre-2010 events. Through financial history checks, Garza confirmed Amanda was in Texas Hill Country throughout 2009-2010, with no recorded Houston trips. Ryan also had no Houston transactions in that period, though he had visited the city years earlier for construction work. At the current analysis level, Garza noted in his report that the foreign DNA should remain in the open evidence category, but was insufficient to form a separate hypothesis. More importantly, the DNA proved one thing. Amanda's vehicle once bore traces of a third party, unknown when unknown by whom, and unknown whether related to the disappearance. For a cold case file, discovering a new physical indicator alone was a major step, enough for Garza to re-examine all events tied to the vehicle, Amanda's usual route, and the possibility of involvement by someone outside the family. And this partial DNA sample, though vague and inconclusive, opened another door, shifting the investigation into a completely different state before entering the next phase. As the partial DNA analysis results were logged, Ranger Garza returned to a data area he believed held greater breakthrough potential. Telematics from the Ford F-250 Ryan used during his Horseshoe Bay years. Though an older model without modern GPS or connectivity packages, Garza knew late 2000 F-250s were equipped with PCM and GM controllers capable of storing raw operational data, even if not designed for investigative purposes. With 2021's upgraded telematics tools, Texas DPS technicians could extract data deemed unreadable in 2010. The extraction took 2 days and yielded hundreds of thousands of signal lines, ignition on-off times, door statuses, gear shifts, instantaneous speed, engine torque, throttle position, body vibration, and truck bed pressure changes. For Garza, the key was not isolated data points, but their arrangement into a time-space structure reconstructible into the vehicle's morning journey when Amanda vanished. When fed into the simulation tool, the first striking result was engine activation, 7:50 a.m. This not only contradicted Ryan's statement of staying home all morning, but was very close to Amanda's phone signal loss at 7:23 a.m. The two events less than half an hour apart. Garza cross-referenced door status data. Within 3 minutes after 7:50, sensors recorded the driver's door opening and closing twice, the passenger door opening once and closing immediately after. This indicated at least 2 cabin entries exits, not a single normal boarding. Technicians simulated body movement via vibration data and found the F-250 left the parking spot with a rightward motion, matching the exit from the Hale residence. Low acceleration data showed the vehicle did not speed, but moved steadily and continuously, typical of residential driving. The notable first stop came next. Per PCM data, the truck halted for about 3 minutes less than a mile from the Hale home. During that time, bed pressure sensors recorded a sharp change, slight pressure increase followed by rapid decrease, consistent with opening-closing the bed cover or loading-unloading an object. This was undetectable in 2010 due to lacking fine pressure analysis tools. Garza flagged this stop as suspicious .1. Continuing route analysis, the truck accelerated and moved a few more minutes before body vibration sensors indicated entry onto rougher terrain. Less smooth with higher amplitude. This matched a dirt road on Horseshoe Bay's edge that Amanda sometimes cycled past. Telematics then showed speed dropping to 4.7 miles per hour, consistent with slow navigation over uneven surfaces or obstacle avoidance. Garza could not confirm intent, but data showed the truck did not follow the route Ryan had described to police. From there, the vehicle continued with erratic speed patterns. 4 miles per hour, surging to 20 miles per hour, then down to 8 miles per hour, a sequence characteristic of scouting behavior, unlike commuting or errands. This clearly contradicted the statement that Ryan stayed home and did not go out at all. Around 8:07 a.m., the truck made a second stop about 1.5 miles from the first. PCM data recorded unusually high bed vibration, as if a heavy object was briefly dragged. Fuel consumption in the final 30 seconds of the stop also rose slightly, indicating higher engine load to counter vibration. Garza noted suspicious .2, abnormal bed shaking. After this stop, the truck began returning to the residential area at a steadier speed. Gear shift sensors showed Ryan did not drive fast, but kept low speeds near residential limits. This indicated no hurry, contradicting his description of frantic worry when Amanda did not return. At 8:16 a.m., Ryan's phone reconnected to the local tower, matching telematics showing the truck's return, again inconsistent with his statement. Ranger Garza further studied other telematics datasets, cabin temperature, throttle position, engine torque. Combined, these created something more valuable, a mathematical driver profiling model. From speed, torque, and throttle patterns, the system could identify the owner's habitual driving style. When Garza compared Ryan's model to the morning's movement, the system flagged style mismatch. Specifically, Ryan's usual style featured quick acceleration, hard braking, and decisive shifts. But that morning's model showed gentler, more cautious control, as if the driver deliberately kept low speed to avoid noise or strong vibration. Style similarity scored only 37%, below the 50% threshold for likely same driver. This was not conclusive that Ryan was not driving, but enough for Garza to mark it a major inconsistency. Further extraction revealed an abnormal torque spike as the truck re-entered the residential area, indicating a sharp steering maneuver before parking. This typically occurs when parking precisely in the original spot. It is common behavior when someone wants the vehicle to look like it never left. Immediately after, data showed the engine fully shut off with no further movement until late morning. The time-space map Garza built from all data included 4 key points: truck left home at 7:50, short stop nearby, moved to dirt road area, second stop with abnormal shaking, returned home at 8:16. The entire trip lasted under 30 minutes, but contained multiple anomalies, unexplainable by Ryan's 2010 statements. Most notably, no data aligned with stayed home all morning, and all pointed objectively to vehicle movement, coinciding with Amanda's cell tower disappearance. Concluding the analysis phase, Ranger Garza wrote in his report, "Telematics data reconstructs a journey completely opposite the original statements. Stop points and bed pressure changes indicate intervention inside the vehicle. Truck departure time and Amanda's signal loss fall within a significant overlap window." With this time-space map, Garza had a new foundation to re-examine the entire case, one 2010 technology could not provide. And from here, the investigation was forced into a different level, as the F-250's actual morning path on that fateful day became clearer than ever. From the space-time map of the F-250, Ranger Garza began entering the most critical phase of the reinvestigation process, cross-referencing telematics data with real terrain structures to pinpoint areas likely for burial activity. The Texas DPS terrain simulation system allowed input of elevation data, soil and rock density, tree canopy levels, and trail classifications, thereby identifying spots where the vehicle could stop without drawing attention from locals. Garza uploaded all telematics data into the model, focusing especially on 2 suspicious stops recording unusual vibrations in the truck bed. Relative coordinates were constructed using direction vectors, instantaneous speeds, and steering angles, after which the model calculated error radii to produce 3 suspicious areas with a combined area of about a few hundred square meters. All were located west of Horseshoe Bay, in terrain with sparse forest, large granite rocks, and truck-accessible paths that could be entered without notice. When cross-checking satellite imagery from 2010, Garza noticed a strikingly matching detail at that time. The area was virtually undeveloped, rarely visited, and far from main roads, perfectly aligning with the journey characteristics simulated by telematics. Immediately, he requested Texas DPS to deploy a ground survey team, combined with thermal drone scans to identify points with soil disturbed over time. The drones found nothing unusual on the surface, but LiDAR technology, penetrating the canopy, recorded a very small depression, about over a meter in size, near a natural rock cluster. Although it could not be confirmed as a burial trace, this depression's location fell exactly within the simulated region most compatible with the F-250's second stop. Based on that, Garza obtained a search warrant for the area and brought the special investigation team to the scene as soon as weather permitted. The site was deep in the forest, covered by a thick layer of leaf litter and rugged terrain making access difficult, but the forensic team still began excavation using thin layer methods. After just about an hour of careful digging, the survey team discovered the first signs: subsurface soil compressed unusually, with slight color changes compared to surrounding areas, indicating past intervention. Digging deeper by a few dozen centimeters, a pale-colored fabric fragment appeared, though decayed but still retaining polyester fiber structure, the type compatible with workout clothes Amanda often wore while cycling. The forensic team paused, expanded the cordoned area, and began more rigorous extraction techniques. As further soil layers were removed, the first bone fragments emerged, small, slender, and morphologically consistent with an adult female's arm bones. The area was immediately fully sealed off, and the remains collection process began. As longer bone fragments were lifted from the ground, the shapes of femurs, ribs, and skull portions gradually appeared. All exhibited decomposition levels consistent with over a decade. More importantly, the recovered skull had a defect with fracture edges, matching the description in Amanda's medical records. She had suffered a minor accident as a child, leaving an abnormality on her forehead bone. Nonetheless, the forensic team made no official determinations at the scene, instead documenting the entire state, photographing, measuring, and transporting the remains to the Austin lab for examination. Meanwhile, Garza sent an urgent request to the forensic dentistry lab to extract Amanda's dental records from 2009. Additionally, he obtained an order to collect DNA samples from the closest relatives for genetic comparison. Once the remains arrived at the forensic lab, the dental specialist began the first task, comparing the found teeth with X-ray images and filling records of Amanda. After just one session, the dentistry lab sent a preliminary report. The root structure of tooth number 14 and the filling shape on the lower left molar matched Amanda Hale's dental records exactly. However, per standard procedure, no conclusion was issued until DNA test confirmation. Bone samples underwent DNA extraction using advanced processing for heavily degraded specimens. It took 3 days for the lab to obtain sufficient DNA for comparison. Genetic analysis results showed a near absolute match ratio with relative DNA, eliminating any possibility of error. The official report confirmed the remains found in the forest west of Horseshoe Bay were Amanda Hale, the woman missing since 2010. This confirmation closed one of the case's most critical questions spanning over 10 years. Amanda was no longer alive and had been intentionally buried in a remote location no one had reason to visit for years. With the case file revived, telematics data, terrain modeling, and forensic excavation presented a clear truth: not an accident, not getting lost, but a deliberate burial effort. And this discovery shifted the entire investigation direction to a completely new level, pulling the Amanda Hale case out of cold case shadows into a more intense phase than ever. As soon as the forensic identification results confirmed the remains found in the forest west of Horseshoe Bay were Amanda Hale, the entire file was immediately shifted to active criminal investigation status, paving the way for Ranger Garza and the Texas DPS team to build an arrest warrant based on a sufficiently solid evidence set. The three main pillars in the file: telematics data pinpointing the F-250's journey on the exact morning Amanda vanished, the stark contradictions in Ryan's statements, and the burial site's precise match with the vehicle's simulated path, formed an unprecedentedly strong legal foundation after over 10 years of stagnation. As Garza compiled the full chain of facts in chronological order, along with findings from spy pen audio analysis, cell tower data, and abnormal behaviors before Amanda's disappearance, he saw the file had surpassed reasonable doubt to enter probable cause. An emergency meeting was held between Texas DPS, the Burnett County Prosecutor's Office, and Ranger Division legal representatives to agree on the arrest warrant application sequence. After the local judge reviewed the over 300-page file detailing every piece of evidence, timeline marker, and discrepancy with Ryan's statements, the arrest warrant was signed at 6:40 a.m. on a mid-March day in 2021. Just before dawn, the Texas DPS operations team deployed to the residential area where Ryan was living. Every step was prepared to ensure safety, prevent escape risks, or evidence destruction. Upon approach, Ryan was home with a friend staying for a few days. Police knocked and read the arrest warrant per procedure. Ryan did not resist, but confusion was evident. While being handcuffed and let out, he asked only one question: why now? But executing officers did not respond, as all details would be presented in the interrogation after transfer to detention. While Ryan was transported, another Texas DPS team conducted a search of the home under the accompanying warrant. The goal was to seek any documents, items, or electronic data potentially related to the case, especially those analyzable deeper with 2021 technology than in 2010. In the storage room behind the house, the search team found a clear plastic box containing multiple rolls of duct tape, nylon cord, unused gardening gloves, and some hand tools showing signs of cleaning with strong solvents. Though these items did not prove crime on their own, they were cataloged as potentially related, matching common tools in cases involving body disposal or scene concealment. Additionally, in Ryan's closet, investigators found an old file of documents, including receipts for building materials, shovels, and a batch of cleaning chemicals purchased in early June 2010, just weeks after Amanda vanished. These receipts went unnoticed in 2010, as the then team had no reason to collect them, but now, under new evidence light, they were seen as possibly tied to prolonged concealment post-crime. An old laptop was also seized upon discovering deleted but recoverable folders via new forensic tech. Folder contents included searches for how to remove DNA, how long for soil to resettle, and how to prevent decomposition odor spread. These searches occurred about a month after Amanda's disappearance. Though direct user identification was impossible, timing and content sufficed for inclusion in the charging file. Comparing this data with Garza's prior behavior model, the team noted Ryan's unusual post-disappearance anxiety. He claimed in 2010 to be completely at home, but telematics and cell tower data proved otherwise. The remains discovery exactly at the simulated vehicle path site made coincidence unreasonable. Garza systematized the full behavior chain before disappearance. Amanda showed stress via spy pen recordings. That morning, her phone signal dropped abruptly. Around then, Ryan's vehicle left home. It stopped at two suspicious spots. The second was the burial site, suspicious items purchased nearby in time, and finally major statement contradictions plus sensitive computer searches. Individual elements might not suffice for charges, but combined, they formed a tight logical structure describing a scenario more probable than any alternative. In the report to the prosecutor's office, Garza clearly presented possible motive from prolonged marital conflict, suspicion of Amanda's extramarital relationship, and Ryan's potential desire to prevent family breakdown via violence. The method of crime was built on data analysis, approaching Amanda shortly after she left home, disabling her phone, loading her into the vehicle, traveling to remote forest, and staging with the bicycle placed in a rock crevice. Concealment behavior showed in truck bed washing, body burial, in isolated spot, purchase of scene processing items, and multiple decomposition/DNA-related online searches. When Ryan entered interrogation, Garza read Miranda rights and asked no direct questions, instead listing evidence in logical sequence. Ryan remained silent, requesting only a lawyer. But that changed nothing. The legal basis was strong enough for prosecution, and his arrest marked the most pivotal turn since 2010, when the Amanda Hale case officially shifted from a mysterious missing person file to a criminal case with a detained suspect and clear physical evidence. The trial of Ryan Hale was scheduled for early fall 2022 at the Burnett County Courthouse, drawing widespread media attention in Texas after more than a decade of Amanda's disappearance becoming an obsession for the Horseshoe Bay community. From the very first day, the prosecutors systematically presented the chain of evidence gathered by Texas DPS during the 2021 reinvestigation, emphasizing that this was no longer a missing person case, but a premeditated murder with sophisticated concealment. The first and strongest evidence was the telematics data from the Ford F-250, regarded as the silent witness that exposed Ryan Hale's entire testimony. The prosecution displayed the space-time model reconstructing the vehicle's journey on the morning Amanda vanished. The truck started at 7:50, despite Ryan's claim he was home. Two suspicious stops on trails west of Horseshoe Bay, changes in truck bed pressure indicating an object was loaded or unloaded, abnormal acceleration-deceleration patterns showing the driver was not moving in typical daily behavior. The prosecution also presented charts comparing Ryan's driving style on other days versus that morning, proving the vehicle operation on the day Amanda disappeared was completely unlike the defendant's natural driving pattern. The second key evidence was the forensic results at the burial site. Texas DPS forensic experts detailed the excavation process, disturbed soil stratigraphy, remains location, and decomposition level consistent with Amanda's disappearance timeline. The prosecution exhibited dental record matches, DNA from bones, and DNA from relatives, confirming the remains were Amanda Hale. This, according to the prosecution, completely eliminated hypotheses of Amanda running away or voluntarily disappearing. The third key evidence was analysis of the stage scene, the bicycle placed in a rock crevice in a manner inconsistent with accident inertia. The helmet found nearly a mile from the bicycle. Slight tampering signs in Amanda's car glove compartment. Cell tower data showing Amanda's phone was abruptly disabled rather than naturally losing signal. The prosecution argued all this could only be explained by third-party intervention, and Ryan's telematics data matched the related locations. Finally, the prosecution used Ryan's contradictory 2010 statements to further highlight inconsistencies. The time he claimed to be home did not match cell tower data. His statement, "never left the house that morning," was completely refuted by telematics. His displayed confusion after Amanda's disappearance did not align with computer searches about decomposition and DNA removal just weeks later. Defense counsel attempted to counter by arguing telematics data could be erroneous or unable to prove Ryan was driving. They claimed the unknown DNA in Amanda's car could come from an unrelated source, and they questioned the remains excavation procedure. However, these efforts failed to create reasonable doubt. The prosecution stressed no telematics error was large enough to alter the vehicle path model, no evidence showed anyone else drove that morning, and burial site forensic data was collected under the strictest standards. When defense counsel suggested an unidentified stranger might have committed the crime, the prosecution immediately pointed out no signs of break-in, no witnesses, no unusual activity in the area at that time, except Ryan's vehicle journey. 1 week of arguments was condensed into jury deliberation, lasting less than 6 hours, a short time for a case spanning over 10 years. When the jury returned, the foreperson read a concise but firm verdict. "We find the defendant Ryan Hale guilty of first-degree murder." Sentencing was read in the same session, life imprisonment without parole. In the moment of sentencing, Ryan remained silent, offered no protest, showed no emotion, but his tightly clenched hands prompted security to order him to stand still. The prosecutor looked directly at Amanda's family, who had waited over a decade, and declared the trial's conclusion was not just a sentence for the defendant, but final recognition of all investigative efforts across 2 phases. The initial desperate investigation and the re-investigation using technology far beyond 2010 limits. As the trial ended, the life without parole sentence was seen as the justice system's affirmation that no matter how much time passes, truth can still be found when technology and persistence converge at the right moment. The Amanda Hale case story not only closed a file spanning over 11 years, but also reflected very real issues in contemporary American life, especially domestic violence, isolation in marriage, and the importance of technology in community protection. Through the case's developments, we clearly see that small, seemingly harmless signs, like Amanda lowering her voice when speaking at home, or spy pen recordings showing inner tension, are actually warning signals many people overlook. This is an important reminder for Americans today. Violence is not only physical, it can silently exist in control, threats, or emotional isolation. Ryan's false statements about the morning Amanda disappeared and the mysterious F-250 journey remind us that dangerous behavior is not always visible from the outside. Sometimes it hides beneath the facade of a normal family. Additionally, solving the case via telematics, cell tower reconstruction, or degraded DNA shows modern technology can be a powerful ally in uncovering truth, even when time has obscured traces. This underscores the importance of data preservation, trust in science, and continuous investment in advanced investigative tools, areas the U.S. justice system is increasingly prioritizing. But the most important lesson comes from the Horseshoe Bay community. Unity in searching, persistence in demanding case resolution, and establishing Amanda's line to support domestic violence victims show every individual plays a role in building safer communities. The final message to Americans: do not ignore unusual signs around you, listen to loved ones, trust your instincts, and do not hesitate to seek help, because sometimes one small action can save a life. If you find the story of this determined investigation and justice for Amanda Hale meaningful, please remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next cases. Thank you for joining us. See you in the next video, where we continue exploring how the truth always finds its way back.